Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. We are all living in a dream. We're in a delusion. I was working in intensive care for more than 10 years. Then I worked in addiction and I worked in mental health. And it was only in the last 10 years that I started to look at the other side of things. So the way we break the spell, or the way we break the delusion, is to actually have a look at information, the kind of information that's on my YouTube channel, Awakening in Health. So if anybody is just really quickly ready to dismiss the kind of information I'm talking about, you are the kind of people that need to actually look at this type of information, because that's how the spell gets broken. I am just editing a video by Nikki Valentini, presented to the Critical Thinkers group in Koh Samui. Nikki is a functional medicine practitioner and she's got so many other qualifications under her belt, and this talk was incredible. Very, very informative about things like injuries that people may be experiencing after what happened over the last few years. So if you want to have some information along the lines of the information I'm talking about, which can break the spells, look in the description for the link to Nikki's talk. Now, I'll make a quick apology because we had some technical difficulties, so the sound is not the best. So if you can go past the introduction, the sound does improve, and there are some other amazing videos that will help break your delusions on my Awakening in Health channel. So follow me there on YouTube and also follow me on Instagram. Thanks for everybody's support out there.
Everybody to Samui Real Session 209. So let me introduce our speaker. Our speaker today is Nikki Valentini, and she is standing right here. Everybody go. Roar of applause. Nikki is a clinical nutritionist and a functional medicine practitioner in private practice. She uses autonomic responsiveness testing, ART or ART, to diagnose and treat her patients. Nikki specializes in toxicology, genetics, and heavy metal toxicity to treat complex illness, and she is going to explain what that means. Big shout out to Dennis O'Connor here from awakeninginhealth.com. Awakeninginhealth.com. So Dennis, as you know, Dennis has also given a number of talks to the group, but he also has his own podcast, his own website, and he records these. He does the visuals. He edits our all of our talks, and then he posts them for us. So thank you again, Awakening in Health and Dennis. Okay, so without further ado, allow me to give the mic over to Nikki. I will dim the lights.
Ooh,
there you go. Now,
nice.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. I must say, it's a bit of an honor to be speaking. Do I need to go louder? No.
Maybe just a little bit closer.
Like that?
Is that better, guys? Yeah.
Okay, I've got to keep it right there. As I've seen many talks here it was only probably a year. It's only a year, maybe. Anyway, but I've seen many talks. So I feel like I'm in some really inspiring company. So as Pat mentioned, I was surprised to be asked to speak here because I'm not I don't want to use this phrase here, but I'm not a conspiracy theorist and I'm not a history buff. So if at the end you want to ask me historical questions, don't bother, because I don't know the answers. I'll just preface everything. Oh look, we've already had a fail. So as Pat mentioned, I'm a clinical nutritionist. I work a lot with toxicity and vaccine damaged patients, and have been doing that since obviously the last few years, but also previous to that with children who have suffered vaccine damage previously. There we go. So I'm going to go through a little bit of a history just to frame what I'm trying to say. Okay, are we good? Yes. All right, you're right. Whoops, wrong way. I just wanted to cover the basics of sort of the more mainstream medicines. So they all have sort of different frameworks that they operate under. and they all have very valuable ways of treating people based on lots of practice and success. So if we just go down to the Western medicine, I'll sort of really be talking a lot about the history of Western medicine and how it's shaped today. So I'll be covering that a bit. I just wanted to preface all of that as well with that there are many types of traditional medicines that I obviously haven't covered here and won't cover here, and they're all of the ones that are exclusive to tribal groups and more ancient practices, particularly medicine, traditional medicines like the Lakota Sioux medicine, which is all around spiritual practices to actually cleanse our ancestral lines, which I find fascinating and really valuable in treating people as well. So as we can see here, I'll be focusing a little bit on the Western medical history, and let me go down here. I'm not going to go there yet. So you can see but 400 BC, we were treating under the Hippocrates kind of method of the four humours, humoral theory, which is called, and it was based on bloodletting and purging, diet, lifestyle, and lastly herbs. They rarely used herbs. They'd usually used these practices before that. And a famous quote by Hippocrates that most people know is, let thy food be thy medicine and thy medicine be thy food. So he was really into nutrition to support health. Then we go obviously into the miasma theory, which sort of coexisted with the four humor or the humoral theory. And miasma theory was a lot about, here we go, it's the Greek word for pollution or bad air. And this is when they started to clue into sanitation and pollution and how it affected our bodies, and what happened to us when we were exposed to more and more pollutants from our environments. So they coexisted together. So these two, humoral theory and miasma theory, were dominant before we hit germ or terrain theory, which I will go into in a minute, controversially enough. But these were really important parts of medicine and in some ways quite well researched at the time. So hands up in the room, who is a terrain theory person? There's a few of you. There's not as many as I thought there would be though. And maybe I'll just go over a little bit about germ theory and terrain theory just to put that in the mix. As you can see here, the definition of bacteria is free living cells that can live in or outside the body. And we have recognised them. They've been seen and cited under microscopes. They don't need to live off of other cells. And so we can see here that the definition of a virus is a non-living collection of molecules needing a host to survive. And as most of the terrain theorists will know, that it's never really been isolated, which is quite interesting to me. I'm not just a terrain theory person. There is room for both of those. But it's curious that we've been able to have this virtual bogeyman. And mind you, in my practice, I treat a lot of what I call debris, post-viral debris. And that can be, I don't really use the phrase as a virus is as we know it, because I think a virus is actually a medically termed phrase, a word that is actually irrelevant to practices like mine. I don't really subscribe to it. I only look for what's happening in the body. So then we go into germ theory. So germ theory really is the foundation of modern medicine that we know today. It's the bogeyman theory. It's the one that's got us scared of everything around us. But germ theory obviously uses the antidotes of vaccines, antibiotics, and antivirals. Terrain theory, there we go. Viruses are opportunistic invaders. And we do see, that is commonly what I see in practice, that you really need to keep your terrain, and I'll probably say that a few times tonight, keep your terrain flourishing, because that is the best health insurance that you have. And there's many, many ways to do that, which I'll go into a little bit. So the antidotes for terrain are supporting your resilience of immunity, lifestyle, and your environment. Just a little bit of the history, because, you know, we might as well get a bit nerdy about this stuff. So Pasteur was the guy who was the original guy who started the stories or the research around germ theory and its effect on the body. So obviously it's the first model of infectious disease, and I think this is really important because, again, it comes back to the bogeyman you need to be scared of and what the antidote you're being offered for the thing that you're been told to be afraid of. So it really started there. And then he experimented with these vaccines that were produced for anthrax and rabies. I just put a note there saying, really, he was drawing from homeopathic principles, and homeopathic principles have been damned in modern medicine, and yet a lot of the basis of this allopathic, what we call allopathic medicine, which is our mainstream medical system that we've experienced heavily over the last few years, has come from homeopathic principles as well. So they applied a weakened form of that bacteria to the body in order to invoke an immune response, which is the same practice as homeopathic medicine. So Béchamp was the terrain theory person. His was also a bit wacky. Everyone, you know, medicine is constantly evolving. So next year, maybe most of my slides will be a little bit hokey. So microbes, he's saying here, microbes are opportunistic. And I'll go into more about that later, actually. So, let me put this thing up. I don't know, is there anyone in the room not heard of Koch's postulates? Okay, a few. So this was the furthering of germ theory. And you can see there that the microorganism must be found in all organisms suffering from the disease. So this was sort of the framework to be understanding germ theory. They must be isolated. They should cause the disease when introduced to healthy, susceptible host, and the microorganism must be re-isolated from the experimentally infected host and shown to be the same as the original. We actually even have an updated version of that, which is based on all of the new genetic information that we have, and I didn't put that in here because we'll just go down a rabbit hole that I don't really want to go down. So, but this at the time was the furthering of that information, trying to prove the fact that there indeed is a bogeyman that we all need to be afraid of. Here's a little bit about homeopathy. So you can see there the 1790s. And Samuel Hahnemann was studying medicine at the time, and he discovered that he was trying to isolate some quinine from a certain type of bark. It's called chinchuru bark, I think it's called. And he found that a hefty dose of that chinchuru bark elicited symptoms just like malaria. So he sort of started playing with that, thinking, well, if I reduce the dose of that, what will I get? And that was the birth of homeopathy, where like cures like. So the very beginning of allowing your body to take a small amount of something in, which then invokes an immune response against that exact thing. So homeopathy, you can see how they've drawn from that a little bit, this inspiration with the anthrax and rabies at that time. So now we get to this lovely chap. So this chap, this is Abraham Flexner. Have I spelled that right? Yes. So Abraham Flexner was not a doctor. He was an educational reformer, I think you would say. He was employed to write what's called the Flexner Report. So I just want to check if I've got everything here. So he his brother, Simon Flexner, was, what was he? Part of the Rockefeller Foundation. Let me just look here. He was there he is. What was he? He was a trustee and the first director of the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research. So he employed his, they were both of German Jewish heritage, and he was chosen to perform this study because he was rather uptight and rigorous. So he had quite a way about him of basically telling everyone how it should be. The purpose of the Flexner Report was to medical education in the United States and Canada, a report to the Carnegie Foundation, who were the first funders of this report, and it was all around establishing, at the time, as it was said, it was all around establishing medical institutions of education at a higher level than what they'd previously been. There'd been a lot of private schools teaching all sorts of medicine, and they felt that it was giving it a bit of a bad name. But coincidentally, what it did was sort of wipe out other medical models. It damned them essentially, because this was sort of the birth, I would say, going that way. This was the birth of Trust the Science. This was the time they said, well, if you're not saying it like this and you're not doing it like that, then you're inaccurate and it's dangerous. I just wanted to show this graph here. So for those who don't know, allopathic biomedicine is what we term, as I mentioned before, Western medicine today. So Western medicine, the mainstream Western medicine that we use today in hospitals is called allopathic. And you can see there, it starts sort of at number 4. Oh, I do need a pointer. And then it makes its way up. You see the dotted line is the Flexner Report in 1910. And what happens to allopathic medicine post this time? You can see there eclectic medicine, which would be classed as the humoral and the miasma theory, takes a sharp dive after post-Flexner Report, and homeopathy, the blue line, also takes a dive, as well as naturopathy. Osteo and chiropractic seem to still have a slow incline up, but essentially that report was so damning of other medical models and so good at expressing disdain for anything else that the public believed it, and the public was frightened. And so here we go. Here's the beginning. So after this time, that pluralistic kind of medicine landscape just dropped off and became pretty much the allopathic model. And we had a moment to then take opportunities and liberties when there was only one medical sort of practice considered viable or trustworthy at the time. At this time, it was the real beginning of the word quackery, using the word quackery in regards to medicine. Local herbalists were no longer trusted, and the rest, as they say, is history. So a lot of these other methods were suppressed after this time. It was sort of looked at with disdain. So healthcare then shifted completely towards a drug-based, hospital-based type of medicine. So you would, if you wanted something, as we think now, if you have a health concern, you go to a doctor, and the doctor will give you a medicine that always has side effects. There is no pharmaceutical medicine that does not have side effects, not one. And I think we're being poisoned today a lot with pharmaceutical medicines. And as I would say, in my practice, I know that you can get off them. That's basically my job. I think most of the time my job is getting people off pharmaceutical medicines that are slightly killing them on one hand and feel like they might be saving them on the other. So with the Flexner Report, it opened the floodgates for a lot of philanthropic funding. So at that point, the Rockefeller Foundation steps in, and they were the largest donor. They were funding, you can see, aligned medical education institutes. Johns Hopkins was a really, really big one at the time. They were funding a lot of pharmacological research and medical research. So if all of the funding goes in one direction, and we know that today still, it's very hard to get funding for research in topics that are not so palatable. So trust the science is right there. We're only researching a couple of things though, it's the problem. So this is this is one of my main areas of interest that I practice in. So I work with microbiomes, and as you can see there, that microbiomes is not just in the gut, it's a community of microorganisms, and you can see there bacteria, virus, fungi, protozoa and archaea that live in and on the human body, in our skin, in our gut, in our mouths, in our respiratory tract, in our urogenital tracts. And they all have different profiles, and those profiles are all unique to those areas of the body and pretty unique to you. It's a little bit like a fingerprint. So it's important to know that we know there's a whole lot of things that we even coin viruses that are inside the microbiome. And I don't get caught up on semantics for the terrain people here because I'm only looking for answers. So I am only looking for the balance of the microbiome to ensure somebody's health. So, here we go. So it's really important to understand the difference between a pathogen and a pathobiont, because we have a lot of these things in our gut all the time, particularly pathobionts and opportunistic microbes. But pathogens, they come upon invasion. So you can see I've put there Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and we know what that is. So they are virulent, and they come in and they'll do something. And they're actually, a Mycobacterium, as you can see, is a bacteria. It's not a virus. So they can, where am I? They can wreak havoc regardless of the host condition. I will caveat that with the severity of the illness that is produced from a pathogen is relative to the health of the host. It is relative. You will still express the illness. So the opportunistic pathogens and pathobionts live on and in us. They're there all the time. That's one I've named, Akkermansia municipilia, and that one is very common. If it's overgrown, it's actually called a pathobiont. It has negative health effects, but we actually want it in our human microbiome. That one's generally in the gut. So you can see here the health of the host depends on barrier injury, immune suppression, antibiotics, diet, or dysbiosis. So this microbiome needs a huge amount of diversity in order to have a regulated immune system that functions with that. So we know that antibiotics really affect our microbiome and kill certain bacteria and species. We also use antimicrobials in natural practices like mine, and they do pretty much the same thing. So when I go back to the terrain theory, we knew all along, I mean, our research is getting better and better, and our testing is getting better and better about the microbiome, the host microbiome. But we knew all along that terrain was it, because that's what we've been looking at. We've been watching even herbal antimicrobials destroying microbiomes and making people vulnerable and sick. We can see patterns pre-cancer in the microbiome. We can see changes in the viruses, the bacteria, the fungi and the yeasts, and there's certain balances that can predict illness and disease that will be coming for you. I often think to myself, I would just like to have one client a month instead of what I have, because in that month, if I could just work on one person, I can predict what will happen to you over the next 10 years, except for if you get hit by a bus or something like that. I can predict what is going to happen for you, and except for man-made viruses. Still can't predict. So, German New Medicine, GNM, sorry, I typed it out differently, but anyway, GNM is German New Medicine. So, who's heard of German New Medicine? Does anybody? There's a few of you. Okay, so German New Medicine, developed in the 1980s, it really relates illness with emotional trauma and shock, and affecting obviously the brain, psyche, and organs. The microbes, and what the microbes do in response to that is the secondary attack. And in my practice, I'll say I work with a number of people with cancer, and in German New Medicine, the theory is if the cancer comes from the right breast, that it's more related to partner relational issues, and the left breast is familial, so children or parents. And every single time it checks out. Every single patient I have that come with this, it checks out. It's quite interesting. But what I also find is that in this era of man-made illnesses and pathogens that we're experiencing, it doesn't check out. It has nothing to do with it. These man-made pathogens jump over pretty much everything we already know, and become irrelevant, particularly for those who are most affected by that. So you can see there that healing using German New Medicine involves resolving the conflict. So this is some images of a patient of mine. She is a female, 62-year-old, COVID vaccine negative. 6 months later, after these very strange, this is live blood analysis. I don't know if anyone knows anything about live blood analysis, but these are the images that you see with live blood analysis. So, firstly, what is that? And when that happened, this was probably in 2022 perhaps, these slides were taken. She had not been vaccinated. She had been on a couple of aeroplanes. She was living fairly isolated. And these shapes appear in here, which are not what you see in live blood analysis normally. Sometimes you'll see a parasite. This looks a little bit like a parasite, but not like that. That's really unusual. And as of the one there too, which is actually, this is the zoomed in version of that. You can also see that a disease state is occurring because she has what's called rouleauing, which is when the red blood cells are all starting to clump together. So 6 months after these slides were taken, she was diagnosed with a certain type of breast cancer. Again, right breast, relational issues, but the blood, what even is that? I sent it to another live blood analysis colleague of mine, and he did also not know. He's completely on the same page as me about where we're at with medicine, and he hadn't seen anything like it either. There was another slide I lost which had a billowing, colourful smoke cloud looking thing. So yes, this is one of my patients. Unexplained. And look at the colour. I don't know if my mouse is there. Oh no, it doesn't come up here. It's slightly iridescent in the real images here. So, what can we do about it? So what I'm seeing as well is I treat people a lot for heavy metals, particularly if you've come in with an illness. It's one of the things I always check. And we are seeing huge rates of aluminium. Not only is aluminium coming through us with the injectable mRNA vaccine and previous vaccines, but it's also falling from the sky. It's everywhere, and I am seeing a huge amount, more so than probably 5 or so years ago, I didn't see aluminium like this. So if you can and you can access that stuff, I do really recommend finding ways to measure and track your heavy metal exposure, because heavy metals are really, really toxic to us, and it isn't the type of thing where we want them in balance and that kind of thing. We don't want them at all in our bodies. So I'm seeing a lot of aluminium and barium, which is the BA there. Barium also is coming from the sky. So I'm not sure what's being sprayed. It's not my area, but I can see it's in people's bodies. Chemicals, obviously. I wanted to make a note there about glyphosate. Glyphosate is also in pretty much everyone. So pretty much everyone contains glyphosate from food. And I know it might sound a bit grim, but we'll get to the best side, what you can do about it there. I studied toxicology many years ago and nearly had a nervous breakdown until I could discover how to work with it. So glyphosate from Roundup and pesticides is everywhere. It's also falling from the sky. I usually find it in the microbiome, in the gut. Air pollutants and particulates fit with the aluminium and barium and what's falling, and obviously the vaccines have some of these metals in them. And in my practice I work a lot with genetics as well, so genetics is one of the layers of practice that I use. And some people, as we know during this, we sort of discovered this at the end of the pandemic, that there are a couple of genes that we could have tracked and indicated to people before they got the vaccine about whether they would have damage or not, which unfortunately we only really worked that out in hindsight. But there is a lot of ways to protect your ongoing health if you're ahead of the game. So biological agents is mold, I mean, we're in the tropics right now, but yep, mold is toxic. When we have more mold in our systems, and it's very easy to continuously be removing mold from your body, but when we have more mold in our systems, we actually attract more and more and more overgrowths of pathobionts. So there's a resonance to mold. It has a vibrationary aspect to it. Some people with high mold in Australia will be more likely to have things like ADHD, ticks and that kind of thing. Like ticks is common with mold, but it also attracts heavy metals, and there's this whole vibrational quality to that. So allergens, infectious agents, vector-borne diseases like Lyme, malaria and dengue, which you can also very easily obviously protect yourselves against. I have heard that it is being proposed that Lyme is also another man-made disease, and I haven't gone down the rabbit hole enough to know where that comes from exactly, but I'm playing with that idea. So I'll just scroll this. There you go. Radiation. We definitely need to get different types of scans sometimes if something happens, but definitely be minimizing your exposure to radiation. When you're flying, you can use protective clothing that's silver embedded clothing. I don't know if any of you already use that. It's really expensive, but you can also buy sheets of silver fabric from AliExpress really cheap. So to protect yourself. Sound pollution is another one, but sound pollution is particularly bad for people with too much mold in their bodies. So diet and food contaminants, as we know, pesticides on our food, vaccines in our meat, that kind of thing. The built environment that we live in. So the buildings that we live in need to be have good quality air. It's a really big thing these days, and probably one thing to consider for the future is air purifiers in your homes to protect you. And then of course occupational exposures to things which depending on your job it can be hard to avoid, but there's always ways to clear it out of your system. So I just wanted to make a note there about ionizing and non-ionizing radiation. So ionizing radiation is kind of like a really high dose of radiation and it can damage DNA. So it's one that you just generally will try and avoid. So X-rays, but particularly gamma rays. PET scans have high gamma rays. This is a bit about what I do. I've said that. I use a number of methods in the way that I practice. I just wanted to note there I use precision medicine, so I'm not a generalised protocol girl. I don't do that stuff. I actually just tailor programs for individual people. Okay, I've mentioned that. So I've written there reduced Shannon diversity score. In most microbiomes that I test, the spectrum of healthy flora or flora in general has changed dramatically, and most of the time now there is low diversity and there is low beneficial bacteria such as Bifidobacterium and Lactobacillus, which we require a lot of. The only thing I can think there is that they are reduced because we're eating a lot of pesticides. So you can wash your food really easily in bicarb soda, in vinegars, that kind of thing. So I think it's important because if you keep feeding your biome with these chemicals, you are more likely to become ill and more likely to become affected from whatever's coming next. Methylation pathways, that's what I'm noticing in my practice. Methylation is basically a big part of DNA transcription and replication. In genetics speak, we call it a SNP. We find many SNPs in these methylation pathways. When you don't methylate, you accumulate. So keeping your detox pathways and your methylation pathways open is vital to withstand what we're seeing now from our environment and from what's being made for us. I also wanted to preface the slides before of the live blood analysis with so that woman was not vaccinated, and I can't help but think that she has been affected by shedding as one part of what's happening for her. So I think in the health space anyway, if you're into that stuff, you'll hear a lot about mitochondrial dysfunction, which mitochondria are like they're batteries of the cell. So they create our energy to think, our energy to metabolize, our energy to breathe and walk and do all the things that we need to do. So we're experiencing this sort of tsunami of fatigue in people, and usually it's just toxic overburden, so the batteries are getting all clogged up. And then there's the estrogen. Most people have too much estrogen. Most people, men and women alike. So as you can see there, it disrupts the autonomic nervous system, hormones obviously, and neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, which are our happy and calm neurotransmitters. They're the ones that help our body still function. Even digestion is governed by these. Digestion is neurotransmitters are made by these beneficial bacteria here, Bifido and Lactobacillus. So it all sort of goes around into one hot soup. I've just made a little panel about the antidotes. And one of the reasons why David and I love coming to Samui is because it's pretty close to the equator. And it's great here, but it's pretty close to the equator. And the light that you experience here penetrates your body in a whole other way than places like where we're from, which is the south of Australia, where you just burn very quickly, or you freeze. You just go between those two. So full spectrum light, I don't really feel like I need to talk about it here because we're in this wonderful place. But if you don't live near this wonderful place, and there's some people online, ensuring you're getting enough exposure to light all year round, real light, is really, really important, really important. And screens deplete the light in our cells. All of our cells emit light. And the medicine they use, the autonomic responsiveness testing, uses light measurement in order to see where the blocks in the body are, or what's not flowing. We'll put a pathogen into the light system, and we'll see if the body is blocked or if it's open. So light, so important. And when a person dies, when they've had taken infrared footage, you'll see a flare of light come off the body, and then it goes dark. Our cells are full of light. So another antidote is periodic. I usually say, depends where you are and what you're doing and your lifestyle, periodically, gently detoxing your body. Some people need to do it all the time. I can't do anything about that here. I can't be specific about that. But periodically detoxing your body, and it can be as simple as taking something like chlorella. It can be as simple as that. Preferably you don't eat a whole lot of fried food and get drunk during that, but taking chlorella periodically is really, really beneficial to continuously be binding things out of your system. Coriander particularly dislodges aluminium from the brain. This is sort of the dementia, Alzheimer's epidemic that we're seeing. There's a lot of people that are harbouring aluminium in their brains. Broccoli sprouts are amazing to open up the liver, and you can use that in a powder form or just have them. Nattokinase is anti-spike, and lumbrikinase, as well as augmented NAC. They're anti-spike protein. Water fasting, if you're into that kind of thing. Juice fasting, eating alkalizing healthy foods that you've washed well is really important. And doing a periodic support of your gut health. Don't take probiotics forever, it's a complete waste of time. Probably take prebiotics forever though. That's a good thing to do with your time and money. And collagen, as I mentioned before, methylation support for your detox pathways. If you don't methylate, you accumulate. And essentially it's particularly folate and B12 are vitally important, but so are all the other B vitamins for methylation. Binders, I really do recommend, don't take something like zeolite forever. It binds everything out, but take it periodically, maybe like 1 month, just 2 or 3 times a year. You can take chlorella all the time because it's a food-based supplement. And of course, the electromagnetics. I have a number of patients who are electromagnetic sensitive, particularly people who have too much mold in their bodies are more sensitive to electromagnetic frequencies. So protecting yourself where you can by turning off your Wi-Fi at night, by putting silver foil around you, or silver cloth, using any sorts of EMF brake devices is really, really, really helpful. Electromagnetic frequencies we're seeing are really disrupting our methylation pathways, and if I go back to what that means, it's our DNA transcription. And DNA transcription is the way our genes are printing out our DNA. I'm not going to get into what those mRNA vaccines did, but our body is continuously printing our DNA, our pattern of DNA. And as we age, the printing starts to get a little wobbly, particularly when you don't have enough of these quality foods in your life. It gets a bit wobbly. And when it gets wobbly, you end up with DNA that is being printed and cells that are being reproduced in unregulated ways. Hello, cancer. So you want to give your body all of the nutrients that it needs to keep printing your body and your DNA out correctly. It's sort of a process of being very, very, very clear by making sure you have nutrients. And electromagnetics are really affecting the way our body is programmed to print out its DNA and the rest of it, all of the other insults. That's my last slide. I'll just read it out. We have reached a defining epoch as a species where we are essentially in a health war. Thankfully, there is a groundswell of enthusiasm for health awareness, with more and more public advocates for the dangers of modern medicine and the intentions behind this compartmentalised thought process. And that's it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. One big hand for Nikki again. Great to know. Okay, Tom, I'm going to start with Victor, okay?
Thank you, Nikki. It was amazing. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
You mentioned that you were not going to go into what mRNA vaccines have done, or whatever they are, not vaccines, have done to people's bodies. I would like you to get into that, and in particular, suggest ways and means to get rid of the negative, harmful effect of those.
Yes. So firstly, I'll say I'm not an expert, but what I know, I'll just tell you what I know. So because I know about DNA transcription. So DNA, so what we know from the mRNA vaccines and why they were being called gene therapy, they do not alter your genes, they alter the way your genes print. So they're very, very clever, and they're able to insert themselves in the printer. So for the people that have been vaccinated, you will keep printing out the COVID message to your body. And that we don't really know the very, very, very forward effects of that, because we're not there yet. But what we know is that we've altered the way the DNA prints. And so when that happens, we can be more likely to see changes in what was predicted and what we are actually seeing. What I'm seeing in my practice, I'm very open about this, is turbo cancers, and autoimmune conditions, multiple autoimmune conditions, and some people's bodies on fire. So we are seeing that. There is ways, for the people that have taken the vaccine, there are ways to continuously be helping the body correct itself. So that's obviously the methylation stuff that I mentioned before, getting the right amount of those things. Really, you just go and get some blood tests and know how well you're methylating now. And taking things like lumbrokinase, nattokinase, or augmented NAC. These things help the body. They actually change where the spike protein adheres to the ACE receptors. I don't think I should go into technical stuff, but it helps unstick them. So it's not in the mRNA, the printing part, but it helps unstick them, because your body's continuously printing out a pattern of COVID, whatever that is. So did I answer the question? What else do you want? What else do you want? Tell me.
Well, I didn't get the mRNA shot,
Yes.
but there are people in my circle who
Yes.
have.
Yes.
All I want is just give them some ideas and suggestions, specifically
Yes.
what they should do. That's all I want.
Okay, so firstly, I'd say if you ever do it again, go and see someone who's a professional and get a protocol. And you can potentially, like the Chinese medicine practitioners were bloodletting. So they were actually, their clients were going to get the vaccine. They would come immediately to them, and they would firstly bloodlet at the site, and they'd bloodlet at the exit points of the body. So if you ever do it again, that's okay, that's done. But now it's about reducing the spike protein replication. So using things like augmented NAC, lumbrokinase, and nattokinase help with that. Unless you're on blood thinners for the nattokinase and lumbrokinase, then you need to see someone. So yes, there's things that you can take, but essentially you would be looking at all of your immune supports consistently. And depending if they're a person who may then have developed an autoimmune condition or those kind of things, the autoimmune conditions can be dealt with. But vitamin D is one of the greatest antidotes for autoimmune conditions across the board. So get out there. Yeah.
Great.
Hopefully that's enough.
Thank you. Thank you, Victor. Thanks, Nikki. Nikki, so are you familiar with Mary Jane Steve?
I know the name. But
I
don't
mentioned
know.
to you before, and
Yeah.
to David, she was actually, I found her on Locked Out or Locked Out Cafe. That's where I found her.
Yeah.
And she did a talk to us. So she was an ER nurse at a hospital in Brisbane, Australia, and she took the vaccine twice, had immediate reactions. Then she looked into it. Long story short, she started telling her emergency room patients, what have you done differently than before? And they said, we took the vaccine. She goes, I recommend you don't do it. She still had these side effects. She got fired. She deregistered as a nurse. And then everything pretty well she learned, she unlearned, and she went holistic. And she did a talk to us once. And then a year and a bit later, she did another talk, and she looked so different, like healthier. And she told us all the protocols that she did. The only thing is that we don't know, and she wasn't sure which one protocol is responsible for bringing her back, nurturing her back to health. She felt more energetic than she did before. And is there anyone, like, she knows about Mercury and stuff, but is there anyone in particular that you would recommend, like a name out there that it's easy for people to look up
For their
for
protocols.
Yeah.
For protocols. Well, there's the McCullough protocol. There's there's the, what is it called? The IPCC.
Yeah.
Is it IPCC?
IPCC.
Yeah, protocol. What else would I say? Yeah, there's many protocols out there on the internet. I think they're all the same, because they're, again, as I said, they're generalized medicine. So they're saying, take these things and you'll be fine. It's not my practice. I go, well, is there a whole lot of aluminium in there now?
Yeah.
I do have clients that have had a couple of the vaccines and they have skyrocketed aluminium. And previous to that, there wasn't any.
Okay.
So no protocol will work
For everyone.
unless they've got that aluminium out, for example. But not everyone harbored the aluminium from the vaccines. So it's yeah.
Right. So it's pretty individual on an individual basis.
She's obviously doing well, right? So
Yep.
It's possibly that she hasn't harbored aluminium, and that she doesn't have that body burden, and that's really worked for her. That's a genetics story.
Okay.
So yeah, like there's definitely a variation for people, but those protocols are good, and particularly if you're onto them pretty quick, with yeah.
There you go, Victor. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Nikki. I go to Tom.
Thank you, Nikki. Great talk. And you, as you're doing that, you're making me think more and more of the benefits of living in Samui. I mean, we've got all the vitamin D, we've got the right sun angle near to the equator, we've got the organic food that we can grow if we need to. And anyhow, sorry. However, we had a quick chat before the meeting, and one name came into focus, and that was Rockefeller. In this talk, and in the and in the talk that I gave a couple of weeks ago, which was relating to the monetary system. Now, the timeline of what you're talking about the takeover of the traditional medical systems to the allopathic system is very much the same timeline that I've been talking about as the takeover of the monetary system. Now, we think that there's likely to be a change in the monetary system coming pretty soon, and a major one at that. This is speculation, but I think we can all feel that. Do you see any parallels in the takedown of the institutions of the medical system, of the allopathic medical system? Maybe the one thing that springs to mind right now is RFK, but anyhow, that I think that's the question. You know what I'm asking?
Yeah. So in my practice, what I'm seeing is a lot more skepticism across the board with people post this experience who went and lined up and thought they were doing the right thing and took the vaccine, and then go, I knew that it was wrong and now I know that was wrong. I need to do something about it. So the civilians are waking up. In my I think a lot of people are referred to me to come and see me because they know I'm sympathetic to understanding that plays a part in their health story. As far as I think there's this weird balance going on that I kind of liken to the Palestine kind of situation that we're in. We're standing watching and can't do anything about it except for try and protect ourselves as best we can. And I kind of see that for the medical system, because there's all these little blips of, you know, JFK, RFK, RFK's, you know, anti-vaccine, etc., which is a bit convoluted, I believe, anyway. But we're seeing it. But what can we do about it? Because the beast rolls on, and then people will be compromised, I'm sure, again, by not being able to work or being afraid, or who knows how that happens again. But what I do see in my practice is that there is a lot of people waking up that were not in that place before. And some of them, unfortunately, are waking up to a hell of a lot of pain and things. And then there's the very few percentage that go, my turbo cancer has nothing to do with that.
Thank you. Marianne, sorry, do you mind muting your microphone, please? Just for okay. Oh, geez. Okay, here we go. Andy.
As a matter of interest, how many people in this room had or didn't have the vaccine?
No. Yeah. Did everyone hear that? Yeah. Okay. That I would say that's up to anybody, but
Disclose.
Yeah.
Well, it is that I'll comment. That's exactly right. Not everybody had a reaction. It's doesn't mean it's not in there, but and my only argument for life is all about looking forward and going, how do I be in this? How do I protect myself in the future and be the best version of myself so I can be in service to everyone else? So you don't know what's sleeping, but you can do something about it. That's the point.
You know, it's a bit like, okay, we can say there was a change in the way medicine was done. Okay, and I'm just going to try and put a little bit of subtlety across it. So there's a change in the way medicine's been done, and you've got things like penicillin, et cetera, and what you find is when that starts is that the probably when you look at it, the death rate or goes down. So it has some effect, right? Okay. Then, of course, Big Pharma can get hold of it all, and they can like rev the entire thing up for their own benefit. And so you can say, well, some of it, you know, is actually beneficial. And so we're not really, you know, I think it's we got to be a bit careful to say we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, in that there's always more than one approach. And I'm all with you for a lot of what you're saying. Okay. So, but I'm also would say some of it works and some of it doesn't work, and some of, you know, but it's like everything, everyone's got their favorite thing and they want to push their favorite thing, and actually it's always going to be a combination of 4 or 5 or 6 things. It's always going to be more subtle than human beings think.
Absolutely.
So that's just my point on that.
So when I see people in my practice who come in and say, oh, I've got this fatigue problem and I went to the doctor and the doctor did nothing about it, I say, you just went to the wrong toolkit. It's not that the doctor's wrong. It's that you went to the wrong toolkit. They don't have that toolkit. They've got the toolkit that will save you when you're dying, that will fix your broken bones, and they're amazing and irreplaceable at emergencies. Penicillin, which is wonderful and it saved lives, killed microbiomes badly and caused more disease. So it is that kind of like, it's just a progression. It doesn't mean it was bad. That's right. And that's what we miss, you know. And I guess where we look at the Flexner report, you can see on the graph that all the other voices were drowned.
Okay.
And what's that about?
Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Nikki. So jump over to Julius. Yeah, thanks.
Hello.
Hello.
I have 3 questions actually, but they will be easy enough. The first one is you mentioned that that aluminum and barium and things like that are coming from the sky. What is the evidence that you have found for that?
So the only evidence that I can say I directly have found for that is in my patients and what I'm seeing across the board. I do a lot of heavy metal testing. So there are other inputs for those, but it's gone up exponentially. So the only other hard evidence I have for that is that my sister is a practicing homeopath who practices mainly in America. One of her patients, she also treats as vaccine damaged children with homeopathy. And one of her clients there was working on a big chemical engineering base. I can't remember where in the States, not my patient. And she said to him, look, firstly, I need to know what your children are exposed to. Because usually when anyone as a clinician gets a heavy metal report, you have to ask questions about where it's come from. And he says to her, he works at this chemical engineering base, and he says, I'll tell you, he said, I can't tell you what everyone's being exposed to, but what I can tell you is that there is aluminium we're spraying from the sky. So that's the only most direct thing I can say, other than the things that I read, the other medical people that I speak to, and what we're seeing across the board. So,
all right, fair enough.
Yeah.
What is your take on, for example, sauna to get rid of heavy metals?
Fantastic.
Right? It's okay.
Fantastic. Saunas, they can be hot stone, they can be infrared, doesn't matter, as long as they're low EMF infrared. Fantastic. Drop a bit of chlorella in your mouth, get in a sauna, and you'll start mobilizing.
And the last one is, you mentioned that the vaccine, in an analogy, changes the printer. Do you think there is something on the horizon that you can rechange the printer?
Well, that's definitely not my area. There is no science that's done that, but they did it in the first place, so I don't know what you can undo as well. I mean, there's so much that we don't know in this space. But what we do know and what we can see is the expression in people's bodies. This is my world. I can't work in any other worlds. But so what we do is mitigate that by enhancing the terrain, making sure the methylation's working really well, getting rid of the metals. And then your body our bodies are extraordinary at adjusting. They're extraordinary. We can heal most things. So particularly if you believe it, you can heal most things.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Julia. Thanks, Nikki. We got one on Zoom. Tom, would you like to read it? From Pete.
And okay, Pete asks, recent reports suggest a possible link between mercury fillings and breast cancer, with some claims that the side of the mouth containing the filling corresponds to the side of the breast cancer. What are your thoughts on this? And would you recommend that people consider having their mercury fillings removed?
Great question. Great question. So I can't say specifically whether the site in the mouth correlates to the side or the site of breast cancer. In the autonomic responsiveness testing that I use in my clinic, I can test where mercury is in the body. I actually brought along with me tonight. I have a whole lot of vials that I use in my practice. Some have the spike protein in them, some have Epstein-Barr virus in them, and metals and different things. So using those, I can find the resonance of you want. Yes. I can find whether there is a correlation. There's not always a correlation, but there absolutely can be a correlation in regards to getting mercury out. So firstly, we generally have more mercury from fish, particularly large fish, than we do from the amalgams in our mouths. Secondly, if you have sorted out your terrain and your detox pathways well, it is beneficial to get amalgams out of your mouth because they do leach. It's true. They also cause changes in bacterial function. Sort of when we go back to the oral microbiome, it affects the oral microbiome. So in regards to that, If your terrain is very healthy, that's when you might get them out. If you're not well, getting a mercury amalgams out can be a massive insult to the body. In the long term, it's always a really good thing to do, depending how many you have. But as I said, when you test, the way that I test with mercury is there's definitely a correlation between mercury, thyroid problems, heart disease, and then if it's a heart, then there's a breast right there too. So hopefully that answers all that.
Brilliant. Great question, Pete. Fantastic
Yeah,
answer,
good
Nikki.
question.
Okay, Kayla.
Sorry, I was going to ask you this afterwards because it's a little bit personal.
Ooh,
But then I thought maybe there's other people that want to know the answer to this question and
Right.
don't want to ask it. So basically, I've just split up with my ex, and he told me when we first got together that he didn't take the vaccine. I've now found out, aside from a myriad of other bullshit, that he did take the vaccine. So what I want to know is, did the spike protein potentially get transmitted through intimacy, shall we say?
yes. So yes, it did.
Oh, fuck.
But wait, if you did not inject it, then you aren't printing it. So you're not reprinting. You're not in the printer. You would have absolutely received it. You may not have it in your body. I would just do one of the protocols. Do a protocol, and then you just reduce that spike activity in your body, because it blocks what's called ACE receptors, which govern our blood pressure system. Well, that's part of it, but that's more like our blood pressure system, which was a very clever thing to do to affect the way it's called our renin-angiotensin system, which governs the way the blood responds to the vessels in expansion and contraction. So when you change that, you change everything in your body. So you change like how blood moves, how you detox, how your body clears out toxins, your blood pressure, and that whole, the way your heart pumps, for example, and puts pressure on all of that. But you can clear that. Yes. Yeah. It's
Great.
Yes. You were shed on. You just, and look,
It contains many nuances that we probably don't want to hear about, but thank you very much. Squirter, thank you. Okay, so let me just say, could I recommend the Green Light 3-day juice detox cell? Available 2,900.
excellent.
Nikki, just one more quick question. Which method of heavy metal testing do you use or consider to be the best? And what do you think about hair analysis in particular?
So I use hair analysis a lot, and I use vials that I have to find where it is in the body. So I use hair analysis because it's easy. It's the easiest, the cheapest. In the perfect world, you do urine, and it's especially challenged urine test, DMSA challenged urine test, which is mainly done in Germany, and you have to send samples there, and stool tests as well. So if you want to be really anal about it, you do all of those, but I just gather from generally a hair test, and sometimes I don't even do that. Sometimes I'll just try and find it using my mercury vials and things in the body using autonomic responsiveness testing. So you can usually find it. We can find where the spike protein is hanging out in someone's body. And then there's simple antidotes like nicotine patches on that organ at certain dosages to start to move it on. It aggravates it. We could go into the science of that, but I think I'll bore you to tears.
Fascinating. Great. Thanks, Victor. And thanks again, Kayla. Thank you, Nikki. Here we go, Andy.
Yeah, just one more. So you were talking about more aluminium and barium in the environment. Okay. So it could be a terrestrial source. And there is this kind of whole theory with viruses that sometimes they come from out of space, etc. So it depends on what space the Earth is moving through. And so it could also, interestingly be what space the Earth is moving through as to what it's hitting, and which can explain a whole lot of things if you look through history about viruses and illnesses, etc., etc. So that could be another interesting factor, that it might not be And it might be terrestrial or it might not be terrestrial, but there is a whole environmental thing that will change with the earth as it moves through stuff. And that's why you suddenly get these plagues or other things that happen.
And I think maybe we're also being a bit more exposed to gamma radiation at the moment. Yeah, there's a whole lot of the solar flares and those things that is this ionizing radiation that affect us and our behaviors as well. And that's a whole other extraterrestrial talk. I'd love to get into that sometime.
Brilliant. That's great. Another one. Have another question from Awakening in Health.
Dennis.
Dennis O'Connor. A little bit of.
We've had kind of a similar chat before, and I'm interested for you to mention it to here. But how do you think we could activate the placebo effect to get an ultimate detox going?
How do you think we can activate the placebo effect? So really, to get a spike detox you're talking about, or any detox? Yes. Yeah. I'm actually really supportive particularly in this age of homeopathics as a practice for removing things. I think we're becoming more and more sharpened to the resonance of illnesses. Like what I do in my practice with ART is all about resonance. I'm finding light patterns and resonance, and it's very, very present. And when I have an assistant who'll come in with their partner and they become the proxy, I always like to have a proxy there that I test for that person. And the proxy's always like, I can feel it. I know exactly everything that's going to happen. And that attunement is a great way to have an effect with almost nothing, becoming more attuned. And then I love meditation. So I'm really into going into meditative states to heal things, but
when we're having a conversation, we're always focused on illness and what's wrong. And that kind of is the antithesis a little bit of the placebo effect. So would you kind of suggest sitting in that place of guaranteeing in the future in your own mind that you're going to be well?
Yes, but there's a lot of nuance in that, because knowing, as I mentioned before, even with German new medicine, for example, man-made pathogens are virile. And they're jumping a lot of these barriers and parts of ourselves. But I think deep meditative states are always a wonderful place to go without kidding yourself. You can't go, I just stopped and imagined myself as a whole being and then it's done. I mean, some people will be able to do that, don't get me wrong, but it takes a lot of time and practice and work to deeply, deeply believe that. When I have a patient come into my practice for the first time who's got cancer, the first thing I ask them is, do you think you can heal? 90% of them do not. 90% of them have handed themselves over to someone else, including someone like me, to heal them. And I think it's actually, I try and express that it's in their hands, and most people, one, feel scared about that, but two, just don't believe it. They don't believe they have the ability to do that. And I think it's almost 50% of the medicine, actually, knowing that, yeah. And some people think that I'm crazy when I say, oh, no, you can fix that. Oh, you can fix that. Oh, no, you could just fix that. They're like, well, the system didn't tell me I could fix that. It's like, well, I'll tell you, I've seen it before. You can fix that. That's all fixable. So, yeah, did that answer your question?
Yeah, badass question. Thanks, Dennis. Awakening in Health, in case I didn't mention it. Thanks, Nikki. So just on a funny side note, the word in Japanese for sickness or ailment is byoki, and it's two Chinese or two Japanese characters. When you reverse them, it basically says sickness of the mind, sickness or ailment of the spirit. It'll be the same in Chinese. We have many words like that, like dis-ease, mind not at ease, the mind leads, the body follows. So it's very interesting that you use this in your practice. The more and more people that hear this and start to believe it, the faster I think people will start healing. Yeah?
That's right. And, you don't need expensive, some people do, but you don't really need expensive practitioners and supplements and herbs and these kind of things if you've done half of the work of deeply practicing balance within yourself and believing that you can heal yourself, actually. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Mike.
Thank you, Pat. And thank you, Nikki, for scratching the surface. Really, I don't have a lot of background in that, so it's making me think a lot.
Oh, good.
How do the Rockefellers benefit from the Flexner Report?
Well, firstly, I'm not the historian and I'm not an expert on the Rockefellers. I'm suspicious of the Rockefellers, but essentially there's a lot of money to be made from pharmaceutical medications. So in that very early place, and we don't know the intentions because I think the history of medicine has had good and somewhat evil intentions potentially, particularly around making money. So at that point, they saw a way to make a lot of money and potentially think they're saving the world as well. I don't know the thought process, if that's, don't know.
I'm sure there are like 10 people in this room that I
They're
could hand the
gonna
mic
answer that
to,
better.
and they would
Yeah.
snatch the mic from me in a moment's notice and give you a 2-hour answer to that. But if you hang around, we go for a few
be
drinks,
talks.
healthy drinks at the front, then I'm sure many of the people will explain exactly.
Alkalizing detox drinks all round. Let's go.
That's right. With a little bit of alcoholic detox drinks. One more question from
Zing.
And it's a last question from online from Franz, Franz van der Bosch, and who's a well-known expert on China. And Franz asks, why have you not mentioned a single word about Gehong in the 4th century variolation, the deliberate exposure to smallpox scabs, human pox, to induce immunity? Edward Jenner's work was based on what existed in China for many centuries.
Why have I
Thank
not
you,
mentioned it? Because I don't know a lot about it.
Ben.
I don't know a lot about it.
Thank
Yeah,
you
no.
for that, Franz. I think now
But
we're
I
going to
think
do
that's-
research into that.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think Franz must have more information for us. That'll be his next talk, perhaps.
Franz, that's going to be your
Yes.
next talk if you don't.
Yes, certainly I have. Yes. Okay, I'll explain that end of October when I'm in Koh Samui.
Oh, hang on, we lost.
Okay, wonderful. So then, so Franz, we'll stay in contact. We'll plan your next trip. I think it's October you're coming, so you can do a talk then. Thank you very much for the
Great.
question.
All right.
We're good. So I have a few question, Jade. Clapping. So I just have a few. Actually, I had quite a few. So just to summarize, one, our latitude, our location on the planet close to the equator, we're about 9.9 degrees northern latitude, is ideal in terms of getting full spectrum sunlight. So Dennis did a really good talk on blue light. It was a really fascinating talk. The same stuff mentioned that screens emit it, phone screens, various screens emit it, and we have our crazy red glasses. You also mentioned radiation, right? Radiation, to be wary of radiation. So is it a good idea, for example, it's a rhetorical question, to turn off your cell phone, whatever, and put it in another room at nighttime? Yeah.
Tuck it in
your pocket, any
Yeah.
part. Grounding sheets for your bed, would they?
Grounding sheets are a little controversial.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them aren't earthed.
Yeah. If they're earthed, I
They're
mean.
earthed properly, not
Yeah.
in a plug.
Yeah.
Don't just plug that in. It needs to be actually, you can hang the plug out the window and plug it into
the ground. Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
Great.
That's exactly it.
Okay.
So and then yes, great, but don't plug that in, earthing mats.
Okay.
Don't plug it into your electricity source. I mean, having a demand switch is fantastic in your bedroom, for example, where you can switch it and the circuit in your whole room stops. So there's no circulating electricity around you as you sleep.
What's
but you
that
can,
called? You have to
demand
install
switch.
it. You have to install it into your house.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think they're expensive to install, a couple of $100.
Okay.
And yeah, so it just shut it down. You can also get like silver fabric,
Right.
mozzie nets
Like
things,
Faraday cage. type
Faraday
thing.
cage type
Yeah.
things. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Just on that note, sorry, I'm not going to tell all my stories, but 30 something years ago, I had a mercury lead filling on my left side. And just going back to placebo effect, meditation, intuition, I just felt I had this scab around here. We call this gokoku, this pressure point here in Japanese. And it persisted for a year. And I just felt that it was connected to my lower jaw, my teeth. And I thought, that's crazy. Till I asked my guys I used to train with who were acupuncturists and acupressure experts. And they said that it was connected, this to the lower set of teeth. So I went and got it removed. And immediately, like within a day, the scab that had persisted here for a year, once I took that out, I just felt like that was it. And then gone.
And
Great
that's
story,
is
isn't it?
just
It's a great
showing
story.
your
But it's true.
imbalance.
It's actually, thank you very much. Yeah. But it's true.
Right.
Yeah.
And we see this all the time in
Right.
practice.
Yeah.
That these people don't believe it, or they think it's a little thing and it's nothing. But those little things in that, oh, you just, you know, you need that filling, you get that filling, there's no comment about it. But actually they do. They cause, well, in ART, they cause the light to be infracted in
Right.
a chaotic pattern,
Yeah.
which it isn't coherent.
Yeah.
It's not coherent light.
It's incredible because also like back in the mid 90s, I remember going to Australia specifically. I flew from Japan to Australia, 5 hours from Sydney into Aboriginal sacred grounds where a guy who was supposed to be dead of cancer, his father died at 32. He was diagnosed at 7 with cancer, basically lived in the hospital until he was like 16. He was told by the doctors he would never see his 18th birthday. He ran away from hospital, came across some woman who started teaching him tantric, like yoga and stuff. He ended up 5 years in a Tibetan monastery in New South Wales. And when I met him, he was 47. And I was introduced to him through 2 other people who were karate and yoga instructors. I flew to see him. He looked at my body and he goes, "You've got pimples here." And he goes, I said, and he goes, "Lie down." And he did organ manipulation. And these pimples, I didn't even notice, and he told me. And I said, "Yeah, they've been there for, I don't know, a couple of weeks." And he said, "Well, that's because your organs are malaligned."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Yeah, okay. This one took a lot to believe, but okay." And same thing. Did it? Gone.
There it is.
For him, it was clear. For me, I just had a few pimples that I'd pop later in the mirror. But for him, it was something significant. And he immediately attributed it to my organs not being aligned.
Yeah.
So it's just very, very interesting when you hear these stories.
We
and you
have
get
the
into the
ability
details.
to heal without much,
Yeah.
but belief and practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. we
Everybody
do.
sold on that? I'm just checking.
Yes.
Just checking. Good. Okay. Question. Last one.
Very last one. I have a Schumann resonator in all of my rooms. Am I being stupid?
No.
That was the question.
Oh
Again,
my God. I'm coming over.
Socializing in the front. That's why people don't leave. We call this place Hotel
Isn't it?
California.
Yes.
And just to answer your question, so if you remember in 2011, I was an interpreter for RTL after the earthquake in tsunami in northwest Japan. And at that time, the RTL team told me that in 2009, the German Air Force had come clean and that they were actually caught and they admitted publicly, and it was on national television in Germany, that they were spraying aerosols. Like we call them chemtrails. They call it higher stratospheric aerosol spraying. Yeah. And so those chemtrails, it was barium, aluminium, and that's exactly what they were spraying. And they were caught red-handed in 2009. And I remember watching that news report just to sort of back up Nikki's talk about chemtrails and how aluminium and barium and other heavy metals like this fall from the sky. Yeah. I know they would never lie to us, major media.